Dr. Daniel Hayes stepped off the transport shuttle and looked up at the massive structure floating in space before him. The Galactic Archive Station was bigger than anything he had ever seen. A gleaming tower of metal and crystal that held the knowledge of 1,000 worlds. He was nervous. Which made sense, because he was only the third human ever invited to work here among the galaxy's greatest scholars. The other two humans have lasted less than a year. Before going home, Daniel was determined to be different. A tall alien with blue skin and 4 arms met him at the airlock. This was Kethris, his new supervisor and a member of the Valine species. "Welcome, Dr. Hayes," Kethris said in perfect English, though his translator chip made the words sound slightly hollow. "We are pleased to have a human linguist join our team." "Thank you," Daniel said, trying not to stare at Kethris's extra arms. "I'm honored to be here." Kethris led him through hallways filled with aliens of dozens of species, all moving with purpose between laboratories and archive chambers. Some looked at Daniel with curiosity. Others ignored him completely. They reached a secure vault deep in the station's core. "This is why we invited you," Kethris explained as the vault door opened with a hiss. "The tablets of the ancients." Daniel's breath caught in his throat. The chamber was filled with stone tablets covered in strange, flowing symbols that seemed to shimmer in the light. The ancients were legendary across the galaxy, a civilization that had ruled half of known space 50,000 years ago, before vanishing without a trace. "We have studied these texts for millennia," Kethris continued, his voice heavy with frustration. "Every species has tried to translate them. Every species has failed. The language is considered lost forever." Daniel approached the nearest tablet, drawn by something he couldn't explain. The symbols were beautiful, curved, and flowing like water frozen in stone. "What do you hope I can do that others couldn't?" He asked. Kethris's 4 hands gestured in what might have been a shrug. "Fresh eyes, perhaps. Humans think differently than we do. Maybe you will see something we missed." Daniel spent the next 3 weeks cataloging tablets and trying different translation approaches. Nothing worked, which wasn't surprising given that civilizations far more advanced than humanity had already tried everything. Then one morning, while examining a newly recovered tablet from a dead world called Terminus, something strange happened. The symbols seemed to shift and rearrange themselves in Daniel's vision, not physically, but in his mind. He blinked and looked again, and suddenly the meaningless curves became something he could almost read. He didn't think about what he was doing. He just opened his mouth and began to speak. The words that came out weren't English or any Earth language. They were something older, deeper, sounds that felt right in a way he couldn't explain. "Sarath Valmorian, Cathra Nuz Valdrin. Tal Vorsith Amin, Cathra Nuz Vorsith Tal," he read aloud, his voice growing stronger with each word. Behind him, he heard a crash. Kethris had dropped the datapad he was holding, and his 4 arms were frozen in shock. "What did you just do?" the Valane whispered. Daniel looked down at the tablet, then back at Kethris. "I read it. I don't know how, but I can read it." Within an hour, the archive's senior scholars had gathered in the chamber. Representatives from a dozen species crowded around Daniel as he translated the passage he had read. "It's about star navigation," he explained, pointing to different symbols, "and duty. Something about holding position against the darkness. It talks about guardians who watch the borders." A reptilian scholar named Vex challenged him. "This is impossible. You are making it up. No one can read the ancient language." Kethris defended Daniel. "I heard him speak words we have never heard before." The sounds were completely foreign. An elderly Valin named Sorix pushed through the crowd. His skin was pale with age, and he moved slowly, but his eyes were sharp. "Stop this immediately," Sorix commanded, his voice carrying authority that made everyone quiet. "There are legends about the ancient language. Warnings passed down through my people for generations." "What kind of warnings?" Daniel asked Zorix looked at him with something like pity, that some things were meant to stay silent, that the ancients left their words unspoken for a reason, that to speak their tongue again would wake what sleeps. That's just superstition, Vex argued. Is it? Zorix turned to the assembled scholars. The ancients did not simply disappear. They chose to vanish. They had power beyond our understanding, technology we still cannot match. If they wanted their language preserved, it would have been. Instead, they let it die. The argument continued, but Daniel barely heard it. He was looking at the tablet again, at symbols that now made perfect sense to him. Like reading a book in his native language, that night, unable to sleep in his small quarters, Daniel reviewed recordings of the symbols. The more he looked at them, the more familiar they became. As if he had known this language his entire life, and only just remembered. I didn't know that across 3 sectors of space, deep space monitoring stations were detecting something impossible. Energy signatures were appearing at the edge of known space. In regions that had been empty and dead for 50,000 years, massive structures were powering up. Systems that had been dormant since before any current species had achieved spaceflight by the time the first reports reached the Galactic Council. Hundreds of these signatures had been detected. All activating simultaneously, scientists scrambled to analyze the data. Military commanders prepared for unknown threats. Political leaders demanded explanations, and deep in the archive station, Zorix sat alone in the dark. His old hands shaking. He had heard the old stories from his grandmother, who had heard them from hers. Stories passed down through 100 generations of Valens. Stories said that if anyone ever spoke the ancient language again, the fleet would wake. The fleet that had been sleeping in the dark between stars, waiting for a voice it recognized, waiting for someone who carried the blood of the ancient Zorix. Looked toward Daniel's quarters and wondered if the young human had any idea what he had done. Question wasn't whether humanity was connected to the ancients. The question was what that connection would cost, because the old stories also said that when the fleet woke, it would demand proof that its masters still lived, and if that proof wasn't given, the fleet would assume extinction had occurred. The fleet would assume there was nothing left to protect, and what an ancient war fleet might do when it believed its purpose was gone. That was something the stories didn't say Zorix, just hoped they would all live long enough to find out. Ambassador Amanda Price had been in diplomatic meetings before, but nothing like this. The Galactic Council chambers were in complete chaos, with representatives from hundreds of species shouting over each other while holographic displays showed terrifying images of massive structures appearing across dead space. She had been pulled from her sleep just 3 hours ago and rushed to the emergency session. Order. The council speaker, a massive creature called a Thorian, bellowed through the translation systems. We will have order. The shouting gradually died down. Amanda sat in the human delegation section, which was painfully small compared to the elder species who had been part of the council for thousands of years. The evidence is clear, a Tokari representative named Velm said, his crystalline form reflecting the holographic lights. These energy signatures appeared simultaneously across 17 sectors. They are ancient technology activating after 50,000 years of silence. What caused the activation? Someone demanded. Velm's crystalline surface darkened, which Amanda had learned meant he was worried. Our investigation traced the origin point to Viridium Prime, to the Galactic Archive Station. Specifically, to the exact moment when a human linguist spoke the ancient language. Every eye in the chamber turned toward Amanda. Her heart was pounding, but she kept her face calm. Years of diplomatic training helped her stand without showing fear. The council demands an explanation, the speaker said. How does a human possess knowledge of a language that has defeated our greatest scholars for millennia? I don't have an answer yet, Amanda replied honestly. Dr. Daniel Hayes is a linguist, one of our best. If he can read the ancient texts, I assure you he had no idea this would happen. Ignorance is not an excuse. A Corvan military commander named Threxus slammed his clawed hand on his desk. Humanity has triggered something none of us understand. Those structures are warships, hundreds of them, each one large enough to destroy a planet. We don't know they're hostile, Amanda countered. We don't know they're not. Threxus shot back. The speaker called for calm again, then said, Dr. Hayes will be brought before this council. We will have answers. Daniel arrived 6 hours later, escorted by council security and looking terrified. Amanda met him outside the chambers and quickly briefed him on what was happening. I just read some tablets, Daniel said, his hand shaking. I didn't mean to wake up an army. I know, Amanda said gently, but you need to stay calm in there. Answer their questions honestly and let me handle the politics. The questioning lasted for hours. Daniel explained over and over that he didn't know how he could read the ancient language, that it had just made sense to him, like remembering something he had forgotten. The Tokari researcher seemed more interested than angry. He brought up comparative linguistics data that made Amanda's head hurt. I have been analyzing the symbols, Velm said, his voice creating harmonic frequencies. I found something disturbing. Certain ancient root words share structural similarities with ancient human languages, specifically languages from Earth that predate your recorded civilization. The chamber went silent. That's impossible. A Valine scholar protested. Humans are a young species. They have only been in space for 200 years, yet the evidence is here. Velm displayed complex linguistic charts. The similarities are too specific to be coincidence. Other humanities somehow preserve fragments of ancient knowledge through their prehistory. Or, he paused, and Amanda saw several species leaning forward. Or what? The speaker demanded. Or humans are descendants of the ancients themselves. Velm finished the chaos that erupted, made the earlier shouting seem quiet by comparison. Species were yelling that this was absurd, that humanity couldn't possibly be connected to the most powerful civilization in galactic history. Daniel sat frozen in shock while Amanda tried to defend the theory. Though she had no idea if it was true, this is insanity. Threxus roared. The ancients were legends, beings of incredible power and wisdom. Humans are primitive, aggressive, barely worth notice in the galactic community. Yet a human can read their language when no one else can. Velm pointed out calmly a Valine elder named Sorix stood slowly. The chamber quieted out of respect for his age. There are old stories among my people, Sorix said, his voice weak but clear. Stories that say the ancients did not die. Stories that say they scattered themselves across the stars, planting seeds of their culture and genetics on worlds they deemed worthy. Earth was a primitive world 50,000 years ago. Someone objected. Why would the ancients choose it? Perhaps because it was primitive, Sorix replied. A blank slate where their legacy could grow naturally, uninfluenced by the politics and wars of the galaxy. Amanda felt a chill. The idea that humanity might be carrying ancient heritage without knowing it was overwhelming, regardless of theories. The speaker said, "We have a more immediate problem. The ancient fleet is moving. New holographic displays appeared, showing the massive warships converging on a single point near the galactic core. Their formation was precise, military, purposeful. They are broadcasting," Velm reported, "on all ancient frequencies. Dr. Hayes, we need you to translate." Daniel listened to the recording, his face growing pale. What does it say? Amanda asked. Daniel swallowed hard before speaking. It says, "Heirs of the blood, speak the words of calling. The fleet awaits your command. Silence will be interpreted as extinction. You have 7 cycles to respond." The chamber erupted again, but Amanda barely heard it. She was watching Daniel, who looked like he might faint. "They think we're the ancients," He whispered to her, "They think humans are their masters. Can you respond?" She asked quietly. "I don't know," Daniel admitted. "I can read their writing, but this is different. They're asking for specific protocols, commands I don't know." Trexus stood again, his voice cutting through the noise. "This proves humanity is dangerous. They have awakened a fleet that could destroy us all. We must act now. Quarantine Earth, restrict human movement until this is resolved." Other species began agreeing. Fear driving their decisions, Amanda stood to argue, but Velm interrupted. "There is more. Long-range sensors have detected something else, something the ancients may have been protecting against." The displays changed, showing dark readings at the edge of explored space. "What is that?" someone asked. "We don't know," Velm said, his crystalline form flickering with concern. "But it's massive, and it's moving toward inhabited systems." The ancient fleet began positioning itself to intercept this anomaly. Whatever it is, the ancients built their fleet to fight it. Sorix's voice was barely a whisper, but everyone heard him. The old stories called it the Void. They said it consumed everything, that the ancients gave everything to hold it back. "And now it's coming again," Amanda said, understanding flooding through her. The speaker looked at Daniel. "Can you command the fleet?" "I don't know," Daniel said again. "I can read their language, but commanding a military force, that's something completely different. You have 7 cycles to learn," the speaker said grimly. "Because if you cannot, we face that darkness with only our own forces. And based on what we're seeing, our forces won't be enough." Amanda put a hand on Daniel's shoulder as the council dissolved into frantic. Planning session 7 cycles. In human time, that was about 10 days 10. Days for a linguist to learn how to command the most powerful fleet ever built 10 days before. Something called the Void arrived 10 days to prove. Humanity worthy of an ancient legacy they never knew they carried. Captain Lisa Morgan stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel Frontier and watched Earth grow larger on the view screen. She had been recalled from a survey mission near the Outer Rim. Along with every other human ship in space, something big was happening. Something that had the entire galaxy on edge. "Captain, we're receiving priority transmission from Earth Command," her communications officer said. Lisa nodded. "Put it through?" The message was brief and classified. All human personnel were being recalled to Earth or the nearest human station. Civilian travel was restricted. Military forces were on high alert. "What do you think is going on?" her first officer asked quietly. "Nothing good," Lisa replied on Earth. The World Council was in emergency session. President Chun addressed the gathered leaders with a grim expression. "The situation is this," he said, pulling up holographic displays. "One of our linguists accidentally activated an ancient fleet by reading their language. The Galactic Council is divided on how to respond. Some species want us quarantined, others want Dr. Hayes forced to take command of the fleet, and a few are calling for more aggressive action against humanity." "What kind of aggressive action?" the European representative asked. "The kind that involves weapons," the president said flatly. "There's a faction called the Coalition of Free Worlds. They're led by the Corvins and about 30 other species. They see the ancient fleet as an existential threat, and since a human activated it, they see us as the threat. Can we defend ourselves?" The Asian Alliance representative asked. "Against a coalition of 30 species with thousands of years of military development?" The president shook his head. "Not a chance. Our only hope is to resolve this peacefully." At the Galactic Archive, Daniel worked around the clock with a team of researchers. Joining him were Ben Carter, a human archaeologist who specialized in dead civilizations, and Claire Sullivan, a linguist who had studied under the same professor as Daniel. "Look at this," Ben said, spreading out images of newly discovered tablets. "These aren't just navigation records. They're historical texts. The ancients called themselves the Wardens. Wardens of what? Claire asked. Everything, Ben replied. They saw themselves as protectors of all life in the galaxy. They built the fleet not to conquer, but to defend against something they called the Void Swarm. Daniel leaned over the translations, his ability to read the ancient language growing stronger each day. It says the Void Swarm is a biomechanical entity. It consumes entire star systems, breaking them down to fuel its growth. How did the Wardens stop it before? Claire asked. They didn't, Daniel said quietly. Not completely. They pushed it back, sealed it beyond the galactic rim. But the sealing process required massive energy, and it cost them everything. Ben pulled up star charts. Look at this distribution pattern. I've been mapping known ancient sites across the galaxy. There's a specific pattern to where they settled, where they built, where they left their legacy. Claire studied the maps. These locations correspond to genetic diversity hotspots, worlds where life evolved complex structures, including Earth, Ben said, highlighting their home world. Earth wasn't just visited by the ancients. It was chosen. They left something here, maybe in our DNA, maybe in our cultural memory. Daniel thought about how naturally the ancient language came to him, how it felt like remembering rather than learning. What if they knew they were going to die fighting the void? What if they spread themselves across promising worlds, hoping their legacy would survive? That's exactly what these texts suggest, Ben confirmed. The Wardens were preparing for extinction. They encoded their knowledge in genetics and culture, then scattered themselves across dozens of worlds. But why can only Daniel read it? Claire wondered, if this is genetic memory, shouldn't other humans be able to? Maybe it's dormant in most of us, Ben suggested. Or maybe it requires the right trigger. Daniel was already a linguist, already trained to see patterns in language. Maybe that training unlocked what was sleeping in his genes? Their research was interrupted by Amanda, who arrived with grim news. The Coalition of Free Worlds is assembling a fleet, she said. They're preparing to attack the ancient warships. That's insane. Daniel protested. Those ships are here to protect us. They don't see it that way, Amanda replied. They see an unstoppable military force controlled by a species they don't trust. Threxus is convincing more species to join him every day. How long do we have? Ben asked. 5 cycles, Amanda said. Less than a week in human time. Either you figure out how to command the ancient fleet by then, or the coalition attacks. Daniel felt the weight of responsibility crushing down on him. He was just a researcher, someone who liked quiet libraries and old texts. Now the fate of Earth, maybe the entire galaxy, depended on his ability to speak words correctly. Claire saw his distress and put a hand on his shoulder. We'll figure this out. That's what we do. We solve puzzles. This is just another puzzle. But it wasn't just a puzzle. And they all knew it. Over the next 4 cycles, they made breakthrough after breakthrough. The tablets revealed a specific protocol, a ceremonial dialect called the language of authority that the Wardens used for fleet command. It wasn't enough to read the words. Pronunciation mattered. Inflection mattered. Even the rhythm of speech mattered. Claire coached Daniel through every syllable, using recordings they had of him speaking the language naturally to build a pronunciation guide. The Wardens were precise, she explained. Every sound had meaning. Change one tone and you change the entire command. Meanwhile, the political situation deteriorated. Amanda spent her days fending off threats and bribes from various species. Some offered humanity vast resources if they would refuse the fleet. Others threatened war if humanity claimed it. The coalition of free worlds grew larger. 50 species now. Their combined fleet gathering at a neutral point between the Council territories and the ancient Armada. Captain Lisa Morgan and the Frontier joined the small human defensive fleet. They were hopelessly outnumbered, but they wouldn't let Daniel face this alone. If the coalition attacks, Lisa told her crew. Our job is to buy time. Time for Daniel to complete the protocol, time for diplomacy to work, time for something to change. And if nothing changes? Our first officer asked Lisa, looked at the display showing the Coalition fleet, then at the ancient warships beyond. Then we make our stand. Humanity didn't come this far by running from a fight. On the 6th cycle, long-range sensors detected the void swarm. It was still far away, but its energy signature was unmistakable. The galaxy was running out of time. Daniel practiced the authority protocol until his voice was raw. The words had to be perfect, the tone exact, the meaning clear. You can do this. Ben encouraged him. You've already proven you carry their legacy. Now you just have to prove you understand what that legacy means. What if I mess up? Daniel asked, what if I say the words wrong and the fleet doesn't respond? Then we try again, Claire said firmly. But you won't mess up. I've never seen anyone learn a language as fast as you've learned this. It's in your blood, Daniel. Trust that. Amanda arrived with final preparations. The council has agreed to let you attempt contact. We're moving to the designated meeting point tomorrow. The Coalition will be there too, watching. If this fails, they'll attack immediately. That night, unable to sleep, Daniel reviewed the texts one more time. He found a passage he hadn't noticed before. Written in a slightly different style, it was personal. A message from one of the last wardens. The translation made his hands shake. To those who come after, who carry our blood and our duty, know that we chose this path freely. We gave everything not because we had to, but because it was right. The fleet is not a weapon of conquest, but a shield for the innocent. Use it wisely, use it justly, and know that we believe in you. Daniel closed his eyes and felt the weight of 50,000 years pressing down on him tomorrow. He would speak words that hadn't been heard since the wardens died tomorrow. He would either save the galaxy or watch it burn. The question was whether he was truly ready to become what the ancients believed humanity could be. The neutral station hung in space between two forces that could destroy entire civilizations. On one side, the coalition of free worlds fleet, bristling with weapons and barely contained aggression. On the other, the ancient armada, silent and waiting. Hundreds of massive warships that made everything else look like toys. Daniel stood in the observation deck and tried not to throw up. Breathe. Claire said beside him, You've practiced this 1,000 times. Practice and real life are different, Daniel replied. Watching the coalition fleet through the viewport, Amanda joined them, her diplomatic face hiding her worry. Threxus is demanding we abandon this attempt. He says allowing humans to control the ancient fleet is too dangerous. What did you tell him? Ben asked that he can file a formal complaint, Amanda said with grim satisfaction. After we've dealt with the void swarm that's currently eating its way toward inhabited space. Captain Lisa Morgan's voice came through the communication system. Ambassador, we're detecting weapon charges from the Coalition fleet. They're preparing to fire on us or the ancients. Amanda demanded. Both, ma'am, Lisa replied. Threxus is done waiting. Daniel felt his heart pounding. Everything was falling apart before he even had a chance to try. We need to move now, Ben urged. Before the Coalition makes this impossible. They rushed to the communication center. Daniel sat at the broadcasting station, while Claire pulled up the pronunciation guides they had prepared. Remember, she said, each word builds on the last. The protocol is like a conversation. You stay who you are. You prove your worthiness. You accept the responsibility. No pressure. Daniel muttered. Amanda was arguing with Threxus over the diplomatic channel. The Corvan commander's face filled the screen, his reptilian features twisted in anger. You are making a mistake that will doom us all. Threxus shouted, I will not allow this human to claim a power he cannot understand. You don't have the authority to stop us, Amanda countered. I have 50 fleets and the will to use them, Threxus replied. Stand down, or I will fire on the ancient ships and anyone who defends them. If you fire on those ships, you'll wake something far worse than anything humanity could do." Amanda warned, but Threxus had already cut the connection. Coalition fleet powering weapons. Lisa reported from the frontier. Multiple target locks. "Daniel, whatever you're going to do, do it now." Daniel closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and began to speak. The words came from somewhere deep inside him, sounds that felt both foreign and familiar, like a song he had known as a child, but forgotten until this moment. "Sereth Valmorian, Kethera Nuz Valdrin," he began, his voice steady despite his fear. "I am Daniel Hayes, heir of Earth, speaking with the voice of the Wardens." The ancient fleet responded immediately. Lights blazed across every ship. Systems that had been dark for 50,000 years coming to life, and artificial intelligence spoke, its voice resonating through every communication channel in the sector. "We hear you, small one. We have waited long for this call," Daniel continued. Following the protocol Claire had helped him perfect. "I speak as one who carries the blood of the Wardens. I speak as one who accepts the duty of protection. I speak as one who stands against the darkness. Blood is not enough." The AI replied. "You must prove understanding. Answer truly. What is the purpose of the fleet?" This was the test. Daniel knew from the texts that the Wardens had built safeguards, ensuring their fleet would only serve those who understood their philosophy. "The fleet exists to protect," Daniel said carefully, "not to conquer, not to rule, to shield the innocent and hold the line against the void. Power without purpose is tyranny. Strength without wisdom is destruction." "Why do the Wardens fight?" "Because it is right," Daniel replied, feeling the truth of the words. "Because all life has value. Because the strong must protect the weak. Because silence in the face of evil is itself evil." The AI was quiet for a long moment. In that silence, Daniel heard alarms blaring from Lisa's ship. Coalition fleet firing. She shouted energy weapons lanced through space toward the ancient armada. Threxus had made his move, trying to destroy the fleet before Daniel could complete the protocol. Daniel watched in horror as the weapons approached the ancient ships. But the fleet's defensive systems activated. Automatically shields materialized. Energy barriers that absorbed the coalition attack without even flickering. Point defense weapons tracked and neutralized incoming missiles with precision, impossible for organic gunners. Within seconds, the coalition attack had been completely stopped. But not a single coalition ship was destroyed. The ancient fleet had simply disabled their weapons, leaving the ships intact but helpless. "Defensive protocols only," the AI said calmly. "We do not strike first. We do not kill unless necessary. This is the way of the Wardens." Threxus's voice came through the open channel, shocked and furious. "Impossible. Our weapons should have. Your weapons are children's toys compared to Warden technology." The AI interrupted. "But we will not destroy you. The Wardens valued all life. Even when attacked, we seek to preserve rather than eliminate." Daniel felt something shift in the conversation. The AI was testing him still, showing him what the fleet could do, waiting to see how he would respond. "Can you restore their weapons?" Daniel asked. "Yes, the AI replied. "Then do it," Daniel said firmly. "They attacked out of fear. Fear of the unknown. Fear of power they don't understand. But we are not here to punish fear. We are here to protect everyone, even those who oppose us." The coalition ship's weapon systems came back online. Threxus stared at his displays in disbelief. "You could have destroyed us," he said quietly. "Yes," Daniel agreed. "But that's not what the Wardens would do. They would show mercy. They would prove through action that power can be trusted when it serves others rather than itself." The AI's voice carried something that might have been approval. "You understand. But understanding is not enough. The enemy comes. The void approaches. Will you command us against it? Will you accept the cost of this duty? What cost? Daniel asked, though part of him already knew the final protocol. The AI explained, if the void cannot be stopped by force, the fleet can create a dimensional seal. But the seal requires constant power, constant maintenance. The fleet commander must remain with the ships, providing the living spark that maintains the barrier. It is a sacrifice, small one. It is the price the wardens paid. Amanda gasped. Claire grabbed Daniel's arm. Ben shook his head in denial. No, Amanda said firmly. There has to be another way. There is always another way. The AI agreed. But not all ways lead to victory. Not all choices save everyone. The wardens understood this. They chose to give everything. Will you do the same? Daniel looked at his friends, at the people who had helped him reach this point. He thought about Earth, about the billions of humans who had no idea their world hung in the balance. He thought about the wardens, who had made this same choice 50,000 years ago. If it comes to that, Daniel said slowly, if there's no other option, yes, I'll pay the cost. But first, let's try to win without sacrificing anyone. Spoken as a true warden, the AI said. And Daniel felt the fleet systems open to him. Vast networks of power and purpose responding to his commands. He was no longer just Daniel Hayes, linguist and researcher. He was the voice of the wardens, commander of the greatest fleet ever built. Rexus broadcast to all ships, coalition and council alike. I was wrong. Humanity has proven itself worthy. The Corvins will stand with the wardens against the darkness. Other coalition species began withdrawing their opposition. Some grudgingly, others with genuine respect. Amanda sagged with relief. But Claire was studying the incoming data about the void swarm. Daniel, she said urgently, it's moving faster than predicted. We have maybe 2 days before it reaches inhabited systems. The celebration died quickly. All ships, Daniel said. His words transmitted through the ancient fleet's communication systems. This is Daniel Hayes. The void is coming. We need to prepare. I need volunteers from all species, anyone willing to learn the basics of warden command protocols. This fight is too big for one person. Why? Threxus asked. Because the wardens believed in unity, Daniel replied. Because I can't command this entire fleet alone. And because if we're going to survive, we need to work together. The eye hummed approvingly. The first warden in 50,000 years. And already he seeks to share the burden rather than hoard the power. Perhaps there is hope for this galaxy after all. The void swarm appeared on long-range sensors like a spreading darkness, a massive cloud of biomechanical entities that consumed everything in its path. 3 uninhabited systems had already been devoured, their stars extinguished. Their planets broken down into raw materials that fed the swarm's growth. Captain Lisa Morgan stood on the bridge of the frontier and watched the tactical displays with growing dread. How big is it? Her first officer asked. Bigger than anything in our records, Lisa replied. The ancient texts called it a swarm, but this is more like a living galaxy. Across the fleet, representatives from dozens of species were learning the basics of warden command language. Daniel had created a crash course in the essential phrases, the words needed to coordinate fleet operations. Claire taught pronunciation while Ben provided historical context. Volunteers struggled with sounds their species had never made, but they persisted. The key is intention, Claire explained to a group of Valine officers. The language responds to meaning as much as sound. You're not just giving orders, you're stating purpose. Threxus surprised everyone by being one of the most dedicated students. The Corvin commander practiced until he could speak basic fleet commands with reasonable accuracy. I will not let pride prevent me from learning, he told Daniel during a break. I was wrong about humanity. I was wrong about the Wardens. I will not be wrong about this fight. The ancient fleet I had opened training interfaces in multiple languages, helping volunteers understand Warden tactical systems. It was remarkable how quickly galactic unity formed when facing extinction. Amanda coordinated with the Galactic Council, organizing civilian evacuations from systems in the Void's path. Millions of beings were being moved to safer regions. A logistical nightmare that tested every species' resources. We're running out of time, she reported to Daniel. The Void will reach inhabited space in 18 hours. Daniel looked at the command displays showing the ancient fleet's positions. He had hundreds of volunteers now, enough to manage basic coordination. But commanding a fleet in actual combat was different from practice drills. The AI says the Wardens used a specific formation against the Void. Ben reported. Studying ancient tactical records, a sphere with layered defenses. The outer ships provide covering fire, while inner ships charge the primary weapons. Primary weapons? Lisa asked. Something called void breakers. Ben explained. Weapons designed specifically to disrupt the Void's molecular bonds. They tear apart the biomechanical structure. Do they work? Threxus demanded. They did 50,000 years ago, Ben said, but the Void adapts. The Wardens had to constantly modify their approach. Daniel felt the weight of command pressing down on him. These weren't just ships. They were lives. Beings from across the galaxy, trusting him to lead them against an enemy that had destroyed civilizations. Claire saw his doubt and pulled him aside. You can do this. I'm a linguist, Daniel said quietly. I study dead languages in quiet rooms. I'm not a military commander. The Wardens weren't soldiers either, Claire replied. They were protectors. They learned to fight because someone had to. You're doing the same. What if I make a mistake and people die? Then you learn and try harder, Claire said firmly. But if you don't try at all, everyone dies. The galaxy needs you, Daniel. Earth needs you. The Void Swarm entered visual range an hour before contact. It was horrifying to watch, a dark cloud studded with millions of biomechanical entities. Each one the size of a ship, all moving with coordinated purpose. All ships to battle stations, Daniel commanded. His words transmitted through the ancient fleet systems and translated to every species present. The ancient warships moved into formation. A perfect sphere with Earth and several protected worlds at the center. Galactic military forces took supporting positions. Ready to assist, however, they could void breakers charging, the AI reported. Estimate 90 seconds to full power. All defensive ships. Prepare to engage outer entities, Daniel said. Reading from the protocols Claire had prepared, focus fire on the larger masses. Prevent them from reaching inner formation. The Void struck first, launching waves of smaller entities toward the fleet. They moved impossibly fast. Dodging and weaving through space, ancient point defense systems opened fire, streams of energy cutting through the swarm. Hundreds of entities died, but thousands more kept coming. Outer ships taking damage, Lisa reported. Shields holding but under pressure. Daniel spoke the command words for shield reinforcement. His pronunciation perfect despite the stress. The ancient fleet responded instantly, redistributing power to strengthen defensive positions. Threxus commanded a squadron of coalition ships supporting the ancient formation. He coordinated his forces with impressive skill, using the basic Warden commands Daniel had taught him. The Corvins will not fail, Threxus declared. His ships moving to intercept a concentrated void attack, the battle became chaos. Energy weapons lit up the darkness. Explosions bloomed across space. Ships darted between enemy positions while maintaining formation integrity. Daniel coordinated it all, speaking commands in the ancient language, trusting the AI to help him manage the overwhelming complexity. Void breakers at full charge. The AI announced, "Fire." Daniel commanded. The inner ancient ships unleashed weapons that had been silent for 50,000 years. Beams of pure disruption energy lanced into the void swarm, tearing apart molecular bonds, causing massive chain reactions through the biomechanical mass. Huge sections of the swarm disintegrated, breaking down into scattered particles. "It's working," Ben shouted, but the celebration was premature. The void adapted, its remaining entities forming denser configurations that resisted the breaker weapons, just like before. The AI said, "The void learns? We must modify our approach." Daniel consulted with his volunteers, species from across the galaxy, contributing ideas based on their unique perspectives. A Tokari scientist suggested modulating the breaker frequency. A Valine tactician proposed targeting specific nodes in the swarm's coordination network. They implemented changes on the fly, adapting as fast as the void did hours passed in intense combat. Ships were damaged, some destroyed. Beings died protecting their homes and each other, but the line-held Daniel felt himself changing during the battle. He wasn't just reading commands anymore. He was understanding them, feeling the fleet as an extension of himself, knowing instinctively where to reinforce, when to attack, how to coordinate hundreds of ships across vast distances. "The Warden blood is awakening in you," the AI observed. "You are becoming what you were always meant to be." But even with growing skill and galactic cooperation, the void was too massive. They were winning battles, but losing the war, gradually being pushed back toward the protected worlds. "We need the dimensional seal," the AI said quietly. The sacrifice protocol. Daniel's heart sank. He had hoped it wouldn't come to this, but the math was clear. They couldn't destroy the void completely with force alone. "Prepared the protocol," he began, but Claire interrupted. "Wait." She was frantically searching through the ancient texts. "There's something here, something about the seal." Ben joined her, both of them reading at incredible speed. "The sacrifice isn't necessary," Claire said breathlessly. "Not the way the AI thinks." "Explain," Daniel demanded. "The seal requires constant power and maintenance," Ben said. "The Wardens assumed that meant one person had to stay behind, giving their life to maintain it. But that's not the only way," Claire finished. "If enough people learn the authority language, they can share the burden. Multiple voices maintaining the seal together, rotating duties so no one has to sacrifice themselves permanently." The AI processed this information. The Wardens never considered this approach. They believed the burden was too great to share. They didn't have a united galaxy, Daniel said, understanding flooding through him. They were alone. "We're not. He broadcast to all ships, all species. I need volunteers. People willing to learn the deepest level of Warden command language. We can seal the void, but we need many voices, not one sacrifice." The response was overwhelming. Beings from dozens of species stepped forward, willing to dedicate themselves to protecting the galaxy over the next hours. While the battle continued, Daniel and his team taught the essential phrases. It was rushed, imperfect, but it was enough. "We are ready," a choir of voices announced in the ancient language. Humans, Volians, Corvans, Tokari, and dozens of other species, all speaking as one. Daniel gave the command. "Activate the dimensional seal." The ancient fleet shifted formation, creating a massive geometric pattern in space. Energy flowed between the ships, building into a crescendo of power then. Guided by multiple voices speaking in unity, the seal-activated barrier of pure energy erupted from the fleet, expanding outward to engulf the void swarm. It didn't destroy the entities, it displaced them, pushing them back beyond the dimensional boundary into a pocket of sealed space. The void fought, trying to break through, but the voices held strong. Humans and aliens working together, maintaining the barrier through constant effort and coordination. When the seal finally stabilized, the void was contained, trapped in a prison it couldn't escape. The battle was over, The silence that followed was profound. Ships hung in space, weapons cooling, crews exhausted but alive. We did it. Amanda whispered. Daniel slumped in his chair, the strain of commanding finally catching up with him.